To avoid being accused of favoritism, my mother forced me, despite my severe anemia, to participate in the school's group blood donation drive. After only 100 milliliters, my vision started going dark. I reached for the needle, trying to stop the procedure, but the young nurse immediately grabbed my wrist and pinned it down. Only 100 milliliters and you already want to quit? The other students all donated 400. She glanced at my pale face, her eyes full of disgust. Donating blood is something honorable. Selfish people like you, pretending to be sick just to get out of it, deserve to have double drawn as punishment. Nearby, my mother watched me coldly, disappointment written all over her face. Brianna Hayes, is this really how I raised you? Everyone else donated. Don't think you're special. You will finish these 400 milliliters today, even if it kills you. I gasped for air, my heartbeat pounding so violently it felt like my chest would explode. By the time they reached the third bag, my vision had completely blurred and I collapsed heavily onto the floor. My soul slowly drifted upward as I looked at my mother with guilt in my eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. I really wasn't lying. This time, I truly couldn't hold on any longer. A suffocating feeling, like death itself gripping my throat, suddenly crashed over me. My vision went black, and my body collapsed onto the blood donation table. The needle shifted with the impact, and blood began flowing backward through the tube. The nurse drawing my blood, Sharon Jones, shoved me impatiently and yanked the needle out. I'm trying to draw blood here. Can you stop moving around? Now I have to stick you again. When I did not respond, a flash of disgust crossed her face. She gripped the needle and drove it hard into my arm. Oops, missed the vein. You don't mind, right? Sharon deliberately stabbed me several more times before finally stopping, leaving my arm bruised blue and purple. However, by then, I could not feel pain anymore. Well, I'll give you credit for enduring it. No sense of collective spirit at all. Everyone's donating blood and you're here pretending to be sick and fainting. It's only 400 milliliters. Everyone else donated. You're the only one acting delicate. She switched out the blood bags without even looking up, muttering under her breath. Mrs. Cole is such an outstanding person. How could she possibly have a daughter as selfish and irresponsible as you? The students lined up behind me began whispering among themselves. I heard she has severe anemia and still came to donate blood. Did she actually die? No way. Didn't the nurse say she was faking it to get out of donating? Besides, Mrs. Cole dotes on her so much. If something had really happened, would she still be standing there acting so calm? As they talked, the looks they gave me became even more contemptuous. I floated in midair, panicked, turning desperately toward my mother. Her brows were tightly furrowed as she stared at me with disappointment and disgust. Brianna Hayes, stop pretending already. All your classmates are watching. Get up this instant. However, I remained motionless. Sharon paused, her hand still pressing against my arm, then sighed toward my mother. Mrs. Cole, if she refuses to cooperate like this, should we even continue drawing blood? We've only taken 100 milliliters so far. The other students all donated 400 and none of them made such a huge fuss. She even threatened me earlier, saying she's the director's daughter and demanded I record other students' donations under her name. Otherwise, she'd report me to the hospital. Maybe we should just forget about taking her blood this time. Instinctively, I tried to explain. However, no sound came out. My mother's face darkened. She suddenly drove her foot hard into my lower back. My body was already limp. The kick sent me crashing heavily onto the floor. You've truly disappointed me. Since when did you learn to bully people with your status? How did I end up raising a daughter like you? I lay motionless on the ground. Trembling with rage, my mother stepped forward and stomped hard on my wrist. Brianna, pretending to be dead in front of everyone just to embarrass me. Are you very proud of yourself? Do you think being my daughter means you get special treatment? The biggest mistake of my life was insisting on giving birth to you in the first place. Several people nearby gasped sharply. Sharon covered her mouth, but the delight in her eyes was impossible to hide. My heart clenched painfully, like someone had twisted it with both hands. Mom had gone through IVF 3 times before finally conceiving me. I had seen the dense marks from injections covering her stomach. I knew how much she had suffered just to bring me into this world. Then I was born premature and developed chronic anemia. To take care of me, she learned massage therapy and nutritional cooking. She filled notebook after notebook with handwritten notes. Every time I got sick, she would stay awake all night in fear. However, after I entered university, everything changed. She was the department director at this school. On the first day of term, she sat me down and told me that at school, we needed to avoid favoritism and maintain absolute fairness. To avoid suspicion, she gave away the national scholarship that should have gone to me and handed it to the second-place student instead. You're my daughter, she said calmly. If you win this award, people will say I abused my position. You need to understand. To avoid suspicion, she also handed my provincial competition spot to an underprivileged student, even though I had earned it myself. Brianna, don't blame me, she told me. There are too many people watching me in this position. Again and again, I chose to understand her. Again and again, I swallowed the unfairness. However, this time, just to avoid suspicion, she forced me, someone with severe anemia, to participate in the blood donation drive. Precisely because you're my daughter, you should be setting an example. Everyone else is donating. If you refuse, what will people think of me? And now, she was saying she regretted giving birth to me. I floated in midair, staring down at my own body lying on the ground. My arms were covered in needle marks, bruised purple and blue. I was not pretending to be dead. I was dead. Sharon carried the blood bag over and gave my body a few fake performative tugs. Brianna, please get up. There's only 200 milliliters left to draw. Instead of pulling me up, she stumbled backward and fell dramatically onto the floor. The blood bag slipped from her hand and flew across the ground, dark red blood splashing everywhere. My body, which had just been half lifted, crashed heavily into the pool of blood. The white shirt was soaked through instantly, making me look even more like a corpse. Sharon bit her lip, her eyes suddenly reddening. Brianna, why are you making things difficult for a little nurse like me? I was only trying to help you up. Why did you have to push me? Now look what happened. All the blood we just collected has been wasted. Mrs. Cole cared so much about you, and this is how you repay her. Her shoulders trembled as she sobbed, as though she had suffered some unbearable injustice. You have no idea how jealous I am of you for having such a wonderful mother. We're about the same age, but you get to enjoy campus life carefree while I work myself to death as a nurse, only to get bullied by you. Standing beside them, I could only feel absurdity. How could a dead person push her? However, Mom believed her. She walked over, gently wrapped an arm around Sharon, and patted her back comfortingly. Don't cry. As long as I'm here, I won't let her bully you again. I froze. I stared blankly at my mother. Then she turned toward my body on the floor, disgust filling her eyes. Since she insists on pretending to be dead to avoid donating blood, I won't cover for her anymore. The blood that spilled can be drawn again. Reinsert the needle and continue. Let's see how long she can keep up this act. The students waiting in line behind us immediately began criticizing me. So she really was faking it. Mrs. Cole is usually so gentle, and even she got angry. She's only acting out because her mother is the director and she thinks she can get special treatment. Good thing Mrs. Cole doesn't indulge her. Seriously, it's just a blood donation. Did she really need to pretend to die? There are so many people waiting behind her. What a waste of time. At that moment, the dean arrived outside the blood donation bus after hearing the commotion. The second he saw me lying there surrounded by blood, his expression changed drastically. Mrs. Cole, what happened to this student? Should we call an ambulance? Mom turned around and sighed softly. Sir, this is my daughter. She's pretending to be dead to avoid donating blood. The blood on the ground is from her deliberately throwing the blood bag during a tantrum. There's no need to worry about her. The more spoiled and unreasonable she acts, the more I need to discipline that bad temper of hers. Hearing that, the dean tried to calm my mother down. Mrs. Cole, blood donation should be voluntary. If she really doesn't want to do it, then forget it. With that, he turned and left. Mom lowered her head and glanced at me. The anger in her eyes only burned hotter. So you're still not getting up? Fine, then stay on the ground while they draw your blood. Sharon, just draw it like this. Once you're done, leave her there. If she wants to lie there pretending, let her. Don't let her hold up the students behind her. After saying that, Mom did not even spare me another look before walking away. Sharon picked up the needle and blood bag, then jammed the needle viciously into my vein. She did not stop until she had drawn the full 400 milliliters. When she finished, she nudged me with her foot. You can get up now. The blood's already been drawn. There's no point acting anymore. Besides, Mrs. Cole isn't even here. Nobody's watching your performance. When I did not move, Sharon let out a mocking laugh and called toward the line behind her. Can I get 2 strong male students over here? Carry this drama queen outside so she doesn't affect everyone else donating blood. I floated there in midair, watching my body get dumped onto the sidewalk, bitterness swelling in my chest. 2 hours later, the blood drive finally ended. Some students rubbed their sore arms while glancing in my direction, sympathy flickering in their eyes. Brianna's pretty weak physically. If they leave her out there in the sun like that, won't something happen? Sharon happened to be walking past with the donation records in hand. She rolled her eyes dismissively. I know you mean well, but she's obviously faking it. You'd better stay away from her too. Be careful she doesn't scam you into paying medical bills. I've seen people like that plenty of times. Another student who had witnessed the whole thing chimed in immediately. Brianna just relies on the fact that her mom's a department director. She acts like a spoiled princess all the time and expects everyone to cater to her. Now she's pretending to pass out and embarrassing the entire school. Exactly. She's just shameless. She wants everyone to pity her and coax her again. The students who had been worried about me immediately backed away after hearing that, afraid of getting dragged into trouble themselves. Listening to all this, Sharon felt much more satisfied. She turned and walked into Mom's office with the donation records. Mrs. Cole, these are today's blood donation records. If everything looks fine, just sign here. Mom's eyes landed on the line showing I had donated 400 milliliters, and the tension in her brow slowly eased. Where's Brianna? Didn't I assign her to help you as a volunteer too? Sharon lowered her head, hesitating as though she did not know whether she should speak. As for her, I kindly asked someone to help her up earlier, but she said unless you personally went to comfort her, she wasn't getting up. Mom's expression instantly darkened. Mrs. Cole, Brianna's been lying there for a long time already. This really can't go on. Why don't you just give in a little? At least get her up first. Mom slammed the donation records onto the desk, fury erupting in her voice. I've spoiled her too much. That's why she's developed such a terrible temper. If she refuses to give in, then let her stay lying on the ground forever. Under the blazing sun, the temperature kept climbing. Students around campus gradually stopped lingering outside and hurried back to their dorms. The smell of decay slowly began to seep from my body, drawing over several stray cats that roamed the school grounds. I lay there completely helpless, unable to run, unable to call for help. All I could do was watch as they tore at my flesh with their teeth. It hurt so much. My soul desperately drifted toward my mother's office, only to find her happily chatting with Sharon. Sharon flipped through my mother's notebook with wide-eyed amazement, her face full of envy. Wow, Mrs. Cole, are these all the nutritional meals you made for Brianna? Every dish has instructions and health benefits written down. You must have been keeping this notebook for years. The moment I saw the notebook in her hands, my eyes stung. My mother had started writing in it the day I was born. She always said that as long as she followed the recipes inside, I would grow up healthy and strong. Mother stared at the thick notebook, her gaze briefly turning distant. Looking at those yellowed pages, she seemed to sink into old memories. After a long pause, she sighed softly and gently rubbed Sharon's hair. If only she were even half as sensible as you. Just then, the dean hurried into the office. Mrs. Cole, isn't your daughter still lying outside? It's over 30 degrees out there. I heard your daughter's in poor health. If she gets heat stroke, it'll be a real problem. Mother's hand paused briefly on Sharon's head before she replied indifferently. She's incredibly spoiled. There's no way she'd actually let herself suffer in the sun. Sir, I know my own daughter. She's just throwing a tantrum on purpose. The more attention I give her, the more dramatic she gets. Once she gets tired of lying there, she'll get up herself. The dean shook his head helplessly, sighed, and left the office. A few minutes later, someone knocked on the door. For a brief moment, Mother visibly relaxed. But when she saw the students who entered,
her expression stiffened. They weren't there to deliver records anymore. Their faces were pale. One of them was shaking. Mrs. Cole, the student at the front, spoke carefully, like every word hurt to say. You should come outside. Mom frowned. If this is about Brianna again, I've already. It's not that, another student cut in, voice cracking. She's still lying there. Sharon immediately forced a nervous laugh. Of course she is. She's been lying there all day. She just doesn't want to move. No, the first student said sharply. You don't understand. He swallowed hard. There are cats around her. The room went quiet. Mom's pen stopped mid-turn. Sharon blinked. Cats? The student nodded, eyes unfocused. Stray ones. They aren't leaving. Something in Mom's expression flickered, just for a second. Annoyance, maybe. Then it hardened again. So now you're all exaggerating together, she said coldly. First she pretends to be unconscious. Now you're inventing animals around her? What's next? The student flinched. We didn't want to come. But the dean told us to get you. At the mention of the dean, Mom finally stood up. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor as she walked out, irritation tightening every step. Sharon followed quickly behind her, clutching the records like a shield. The hallway felt longer than usual. Too quiet. Even the usual campus noise seemed distant. When they reached the entrance of the donation bus, the sunlight outside was harsh, white, almost blinding. And then they saw it. The crowd stood far back. No one spoke. No one moved forward. On the ground, near the curb, was my body. Still. Too still. A few stray cats lingered nearby, then slowly scattered as footsteps approached, like they had been disturbed from something they didn't fully understand. Mom stopped walking. Just stopped. Her eyes narrowed at first, as if she was still trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Brianna, she called out, voice sharp. Get up. Silence. Sharon shifted uncomfortably. Maybe she's just. Brianna. Mom raised her voice this time, anger returning. Enough of this nonsense. Get up right now. Still nothing. The wind moved lightly across the pavement. One of the students behind them whispered, barely audible. She's not breathing. That sentence landed wrong. Like it didn't belong in reality. Mom finally stepped forward. Just one step. Then another. Her expression was still firm, but something underneath it began to crack, slowly, unwillingly. She stood over me. Looked down. And for the first time all day, there was no accusation in her eyes. Only confusion. Brianna, she said again, quieter this time. Sharon followed, peering over Mom's shoulder. Then she saw it. The pale skin. The unmoving chest. The way my arm lay twisted, blue and bruised. Needle marks still visible like ugly punctuation across skin that no longer reacted to anything. Sharon's mouth opened. But no sound came out. Mom knelt down slowly. As if her legs had stopped agreeing with her. She reached out and touched my shoulder. Cold. Wrong. Her fingers froze there. For a second, nothing happened. Then her hand pulled back like she had been burned. No, she whispered. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just one word, broken at the edge. Behind her, someone dropped something. A clipboard hit the ground. No one picked it up. Mom stared at me for a long time. Long enough that the noise around her seemed to disappear completely. Then she spoke again, voice uneven. Stop this. Her hand shook as she tried again, gripping my shoulder harder. Brianna, stop it. Nothing changed. The realization didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces. In the way my body didn't respond. In the way the sun didn't wake me up. In the way the crowd wasn't laughing anymore. Mom's breath started to shorten. Her face slowly lost color. And then, finally, her voice broke. Call an ambulance, she said, but it didn't sound like an order anymore. It sounded like she was asking the world to undo something it had already finished. No one moved at first. The words call an ambulance hung in the air, but they didn't land the way commands usually did. They sounded late. Like something said after a door had already closed. Sharon finally snapped out of it. She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands. I'll call. Her voice cracked halfway through. Mom didn't look at her. She was still kneeling, still staring at me, as if staring harder could change the outcome. Brianna, she said again, but weaker now. Not sharp. Not angry. Just uncertain. As if she was trying to find the version of me that would sit up and roll my eyes and say I was exaggerating everything. A few seconds passed. Then the ambulance siren finally cut through the campus air. Too slow. Too distant. Mom stood up abruptly when she heard it, like movement itself could fix what she was feeling. She stepped back once, then again, as if giving space would return control. I told her to get up, she said suddenly, turning to no one in particular. Her voice was uneven now. She always does this. She always pushes it too far. No one answered. Even Sharon stayed silent. The paramedics arrived quickly after that, but everything after their arrival felt slower, heavier. One of them knelt beside me. Another checked something quietly, then looked up at the others. That look said everything without words. Mom saw it. She froze mid-breath. What? She demanded, sharper than before. Is she fainting? Heat stroke? Blood loss? Just treat her. The paramedic hesitated. Ma'am, he said carefully, we need space. Mom didn't move. I am her mother, she said immediately, like that explained everything. Like it anchored reality back into place. The paramedic softened his tone. We still need space. For the first time, she stepped back. Not because she agreed. Because something in her body finally obeyed someone else. They worked quickly after that. Too quickly for comfort. Mom watched every movement, her arms crossed tightly, as if she was holding herself together through force alone. Sharon stood a few steps behind her, pale, biting her lips so hard it looked like it hurt. A stretcher was brought. Then silence. Then stillness as they adjusted something no one wanted to ask about. Mom's eyes narrowed slightly, like she was waiting for someone to finally laugh and say it was a misunderstanding. But no one did. The stretcher was lifted. And when they covered me, the sheet rose gently over everything that had been left unresolved all day. Mom took a step forward without thinking. Wait, she said quickly. You can't just, she didn't finish, she still had. Her voice broke in the middle. She stopped. The sentence collapsed before it could become anything meaningful. The paramedic didn't argue. He just looked at her for a second longer than necessary, then turned away. The stretcher moved toward the ambulance. Mom followed. Not walking properly anymore, just moving, like her body had forgotten what pace meant. At the back doors, she finally stopped. She reached out, then hesitated. Her hand hovered over the edge of the stretcher. For the first time that day, she looked unsure of what touching me would do. Behind her, the campus noise slowly returned in fragments. Whispered voices. Footsteps. Someone crying quietly. But none of it reached her properly. Only one thought did. She had been standing there. She had been looking at me. And she hadn't believed it. Her hand finally lowered, resting on the edge of the stretcher, but not holding it. Not yet accepting it. Her lips moved, barely audible. Brianna. This time, there was no command in it. Only a question that had arrived too late to be answered. The ambulance door shut before she could say anything else. The sound of the latch clicking felt final in a way no one was ready for. Mom stood frozen as the vehicle pulled away. No anger now. No authority. No certainty. Just stillness. Sharon slowly walked up beside her, voice small. Mrs. Cole. I think we should. Don't. Mom cut in immediately. It wasn't sharp. It was empty. Sharon stopped talking. The ambulance turned out of sight. And with it, whatever was left of the scene seemed to lose its structure. Students started drifting away in silence. No gossip. No jokes. No curiosity anymore. Just avoidance. Like looking too long might make it real for them too. Mom didn't move. She stayed staring at the empty road. Then, very quietly she said, she'll be fine. Sharon didn't respond. Mom nodded once to herself, like agreeing with her own statement. She always recovers, she added. She's strong. But the words didn't hold anything anymore. A faculty member approached carefully. Mrs. Cole, we should go to the hospital. Mom finally blinked. Hospital. The The words seemed to take a moment to register, like it didn't belong in the same sentence as me. Yes, she said quickly. Too quickly. Of course. I'll handle it. She turned sharply and walked back toward her office first, as if gathering authority again would restore order to what had already collapsed. Inside, everything looked the same. The desk, the records, the neat arrangement of files. Sharon followed hesitantly, unsure whether she was allowed to speak. Mom sat down, opened a drawer, took out my old medical file without looking at it. Her fingers paused when she saw the cover. Brianna Hayes. She stared at it for a long time, then flipped it open. The pages were familiar. Too familiar. Diagnoses. Notes. Iron deficiency. Chronic anemia. Warning markers highlighted again and again. Her expression tightened slightly. See, she said suddenly, almost relieved. It's always been like this. She exaggerates her condition. She's been monitored for years, this isn't new. Sharon nodded quickly, eager. Yes, exactly. She's always been weak, so maybe she just collapsed again. Mom exhaled slowly. That's what I thought. But her hand didn't stop shaking. A notification sound came from her phone. One message. From an unknown number. She opened it. A hospital tag. A short line. Patient arrived with no vital signs on admission. Resuscitation in progress. Mom stared at the screen. Once. Twice. Then her thumb moved slowly, almost confused, and locked the phone again. That's impossible, she said out loud. No one answered. She stood up suddenly. Chair scraping. We're going, she said. Now. This time her voice tried to be firm again, but it cracked halfway through. Sharon grabbed her bag immediately. They left fast. Too fast. The drive to the hospital felt longer than it should have. Mom kept checking her phone repeatedly, opening the same message, as if it might change if she looked again. It didn't. When they arrived, the emergency entrance was louder than everything else had been all day. Too many voices. Too many lights. Mom pushed through the doors. Brianna Hayes, she said sharply to the nurse at reception. Where is she? The nurse looked up, paused, then slowly said, family. I'm her mother. Another pause. Then the nurse stood. Follow me. Mom followed immediately. Sharon stayed slightly behind now, almost unwilling to be closer than necessary. They passed double doors. Another corridor. Then a waiting area that felt too quiet for how many people were present. And finally, a doctor stepped out. He looked at Mom first, then hesitated in a way that said he had already decided how to say it. Mrs. Cole, he began carefully. Mom cut him off. Is she stable? The doctor didn't answer right away. That silence did more than words ever could. Mom's posture changed slightly. Is she in surgery? ICU? Tell me what room she's in. The doctor exhaled once, then spoke. I'm sorry. That was it. Nothing else followed immediately. Just that. Mom blinked. Once. Then again. Sorry, she repeated, as if translating a foreign word. For what? The doctor lowered his gaze slightly. We did everything we could. The corridor seemed to tilt. Mom's hand reached out and caught the wall without her looking. That's not possible, she said immediately. You haven't even finished treatment. She was just. Her voice broke again. She stopped talking. For the first time, she didn't have a continuation ready. Behind her, Sharon quietly stepped back. The doctor's voice softened further. You should come see her. Mom didn't move at first. Then she did. Slowly. Like each step cost something. The hallway to the room felt longer than it should have been. And when she finally reached the door, her hand stopped on the handle. For the first time since it all began. She hesitated before entering. Because whatever was inside was no longer something she could instruct to get up. The door opened with a soft mechanical click. The room inside was too bright, too clean, too quiet. Mom stepped in first. Her footsteps slowed almost immediately, as if the air itself was resisting her. In the center of the room was the bed, and on it, me, covered, still, unmoving in a way that no amount of denial could reshape anymore. Mom stopped walking. Sharon didn't enter fully. She stayed near the doorway, frozen like she wasn't sure she was allowed to witness this part. Mom stared for a long time, not speaking, not blinking. Then she let out a small laugh. It didn't match anything in the room. That's not her, she said lightly. You've made a mistake. No one responded. The doctor stood near the wall silent. Mom took a step closer, then another. Her voice rose slightly. She's just asleep. She does this when she's overwhelmed. She shuts down. You misunderstood her condition. Still no answer. She reached the bedside. Her hand hovered above the blanket, then finally touched it. Cold fabric. She flinched. Just slightly. Her fingers tightened. No, she said again, quieter now. No. She's been like this before. She fainted before exams. She always comes back. Her breath started to shorten. She looked over her shoulder abruptly. Call her name, she snapped at Sharon. You call her. She listens to you more than me right now. Call her. Sharon shook her head quickly. Mrs. Cole. Call her. Mom's voice cracked louder this time. Sharon flinched, but didn't move. The silence that followed was unbearable. Mom turned back to the bed. Her hand slowly reached up and pulled the edge of the sheet down just enough to see my face. And everything in her body stopped. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just stopped working the way it should. Her lips parted slightly. But no sound came out. Her expression shifted, tiny fractures forming in places she had never allowed to break before. Brianna, she whispered. Still no response. Her hand began to shake against the blanket. You're doing that thing again, she said, voice thinner now. Trying to punish me. Trying to make me feel. She stopped mid-sentence. Because even she didn't believe that sentence all the way through. A long silence followed. Then, very quietly, she sat down in the chair beside the bed. Like her legs had decided for her. For a while, she just looked at me. No anger left. No disappointment. No correction. Just staring, like she was trying to find the moment where she had lost the ability to reverse anything. Her voice came out again, smaller this time. You were supposed to get up. Her fingers curled slightly on the bed rail. I told you, to get up. The words no longer carried authority. Only memory. Behind her, the monitor beeped once in a distant machine somewhere outside the room, unrelated but echoing through the hallway anyway. Mom's head lowered slowly. And for the first time all day, she didn't correct anyone. She didn't accuse anyone. She just stayed there, beside the bed, as if waiting for an answer that would never come again. The room stayed still for a long time after that. No one rushed in. No one spoke. Even the monitor outside the room seemed quieter, like the hospital itself had settled into a different kind of silence. Mom remained seated beside the bed. Her hand still rested on the blanket. She didn't move it. Not because she was holding on. but because she couldn't figure out what letting go was supposed to look like anymore. Her eyes stayed fixed on my face, unblinking, searching, as if the next blink might rearrange everything back into something acceptable. The doctor eventually stepped closer, slowly, carefully. Mrs. Cole, he began. Mom didn't look at him. Don't, she said immediately. It wasn't sharp this time. It was fragile. Like the word itself might break if it was repeated. The doctor hesitated, then stopped speaking. Sharon stood near the doorway, still unmoving. Her phone was in her hand, but the screen had gone dark. She hadn't touched it in minutes. Mom finally spoke again, but not to anyone in the room. I did everything right, she said quietly. No one answered. Her fingers tightened slightly on the blanket. I followed every rule, she continued. I made sure no one could accuse me of favoritism. I made sure everything was fair. Everything was clean. Everything was correct. Her voice trembled on the last word. She looked down at my hand. Bruises still faintly visible beneath the clinical lighting. Needle marks. Evidence of a day that refused to make sense anymore. Her throat moved as she swallowed. Then she added, softer. I was protecting my job. A pause. Then, almost like she hadn't meant to say it aloud. I thought you would understand. Silence answered her again. Mom closed her eyes briefly. Just a second. When she opened them, they were red. Not crying yet. Just strained, like something inside her had finally stopped being held in place properly. She leaned forward slightly. Her voice lowered to something almost private. You always recovered, she said. Every time. Her hand lifted slightly, then hovered near my cheek, stopping just before touching. As if she wasn't sure she still had the right to. I should have just taken you home, she whispered. That sentence landed differently. Heavier. Not an accusation. Not an order. Just realization arriving too late to change anything. Behind her, Sharon finally spoke, barely audible. Mrs. Cole. I'm sorry. Mom didn't respond. The apology didn't reach her properly. After a moment, she stood up slowly. Not suddenly. Not like before. Just rising because sitting down no longer made sense. She looked at the doctor for the first time. Her voice was flat. What happens now? The doctor paused, then answered honestly. We'll take care of the arrangements. Mom nodded once, like she understood the words, but her eyes stayed on the bed, as if waiting for the part where I would interrupt, correct them, argue, say it was all too dramatic. But nothing came, and slowly, the reality stopped being something she could question. Mom stepped back from the bed, one step, then another. Her hand slipped off the rail, and for the first time since the blood donation hall, she didn't have anyone to tell to get up anymore. Mom didn't leave the room, even when the doctor gently suggested space. Even when Sharon quietly stepped back into the corridor and closed the door halfway, unsure whether to stay or flee. She stayed, like moving would confirm something she still hadn't fully accepted. The hospital lights hummed softly above her. Too steady, too indifferent. Mom stood at the foot of the bed now, staring at me from a distance she had created herself. Her voice came out again, but weaker than before. If I had just gone with her, she said slowly, to the hospital earlier, they would have fixed it. No one corrected her. Not because it was true, but because no one knew how to answer something like that. Her gaze dropped to the sheet again, then to my hands. Then she spoke again, faster this time, like she was trying to rebuild control through explanation. She has anemia. Severe anemia. It was documented. If she collapsed, there should have been protocols. Her words faltered. The sentence didn't finish properly. Her hand pressed against her forehead. Why didn't they tell me it was serious? She whispered. A long silence followed. The doctor, still near the door, finally spoke carefully. Ma'am, you were informed of her condition many times. Mom didn't respond immediately. Then she shook her head once. No, she said. I was told she was weak. Not this. Her eyes flickered back to me. Something in her expression shifted, confusion trying to rewrite itself into blame again, because blame was familiar. She could have said no, Mom said suddenly, sharper. She could have refused. She didn't have to stay there. She didn't have to. Her voice cracked mid-sentence. The anger didn't fully form. It dissolved halfway through. Because even she could hear what she was doing. She stopped talking. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hospital corridor outside. Then Mom took a step forward again. Slower this time. She reached out and lightly touched the edge of the blanket near my shoulder. This time she didn't flinch. But her hand stayed tense. I was strict because I had to be, she said quietly. You understand that, don't you? A pause. No answer. Her lips pressed together. Then she added, even softer. I couldn't show favoritism. You knew that. The words sounded rehearsed now. Not convincing. More like something she had repeated so many times she expected reality to obey it. Her hand lingered there, then slowly withdrew. Mom turned her head slightly, looking around the room as if expecting someone else to enter and correct the situation. To say there had been a mistake in paperwork. A misread chart. A misunderstanding. No one came. Her breath became uneven. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Unlocked it. The screen lit up. No new messages. Only the old hospital notification still pinned at the top. She stared at it for a long time, then whispered, almost angrily. They should have tried harder. Her thumb hovered over the screen, but she didn't know who she was trying to message anymore. Slowly, her phone slipped back into her pocket, and she sat down again in the chair beside the bed. Not neatly this time. Not composed. Just lowering herself like her body had stopped negotiating with her thoughts. Her eyes stayed on my face. Her voice came out one last time, quieter than everything before it. You were supposed to get up. This time, it didn't sound like an order. It sounded like the only plan she had ever truly trusted had stopped working. And in the silence that followed, she didn't correct it. Mom didn't move from the chair after that. Not when the doctor returned with paperwork. Not when a nurse quietly asked if she wanted water. Not when Sharon reappeared at the doorway, hesitating for a moment before stepping back again, like even grief had a boundary she couldn't cross. Time passed in fragments. Mom stayed seated beside the bed, staring at my face as if the next blink might reset everything. But nothing reset. Eventually, the formalities began. Words like report, documentation, procedure floated in and out of the room. Mom signed things without fully reading them. Her hand was steady in the mechanical sense, but everything else about her looked unanchored. When the hospital staff finally prepared to move me, she stood up immediately. No, she said. It was the first firm word she had spoken in a while. The nurse paused. Ma'am, we need to. I said no, Mom repeated, louder this time. Her eyes were sharp again, but it wasn't anger anymore. It was refusal. As if refusing hard enough could undo what had already been decided. The doctor stepped closer. Mrs. Cole, we understand this is. You don't understand anything, she snapped suddenly. Silence fell again. Her breathing was uneven now. Controlled, but barely. Then, just as quickly, her voice shifted, smaller, fractured. She's just tired, Mom said. She's always tired after fainting. She just needs rest. I'll take her home. No one answered. Because no one could say it back to her. Not anymore. A long pause followed. Then the nurse gently placed a hand on her arm. Ma'am, I'm very sorry. That sentence finally landed. Not like a correction. Like an ending. Mom looked at the hand on her arm for a second. Then slowly pulled away. Her face changed, not dramatically, not suddenly, but in pieces. Like something inside her was losing its structure. She's coming with me, Mom said again, but weaker. It didn't sound like she believed it anymore. It sounded like repetition was all she had left. When they finally moved the stretcher, she followed. Not walking ahead. Not leading. Just following. Down the corridor. Through the hospital lights. Past people who avoided looking too long. Outside, the air was different. Warmer. Realer. Too normal for what had just happened inside. The ambulance doors were open. Mom stopped beside them. For a moment, she didn't climb in. She just stood there. Then she looked at me. Really looked. And whatever argument she had been holding onto for years finally had nowhere left to stand. Her voice came out low. Brianna. No correction followed it. No command. Just my name, finally stripped of everything it used to carry. The doors closed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a final, soft mechanical seal. Mom stood still as the ambulance pulled away. No shouting this time. No denial that could catch up. Just silence stretching out in front of her like something she couldn't step over. Sharon watched from a distance, then slowly turned away without speaking to her. The dean arrived too late to fix anything. And the campus, when the news spread, didn't erupt the way rumors usually do. It just quieted. Like everyone understood that anything said now would be too small for what had happened. Mom's world didn't fall apart in one moment. It unraveled in layers. First came the hospital report, then the internal investigation, then the records that couldn't be explained away anymore. The blood donation drive, the authorization, the refusal to intervene, the repeated warnings that had been reframed as discipline. Each line added weight. Each signature removed distance. At school, her name stopped carrying authority. It started carrying questions, then consequences. Suspension came first, then review, then removal. She didn't argue it. Not at the end. Not when it mattered. She just sat in the empty office one last time, looking at the desk where she had once spoken so confidently about fairness and appearances, and no favoritism. The notebook she had written for me still sat there. Yellowed pages. Carefully structured meals. Health instructions. Years of effort, reduced to something that no longer knew where to go. She opened it once, then closed it again. Slowly. Like it didn't belong to her anymore. There was no dramatic collapse after that. No screaming breakdown. No final confrontation. Just absence. A life that continued without the shape it had been built around. At the hospital, there was nothing left to argue with. No version of events where I got up. No explanation that made it reversible. Only paperwork. Only silence. And for Mom, the worst part wasn't what people said afterward. It wasn't the judgment. It wasn't the investigation. It wasn't even the loss of her position. It was the memory that would not change. A girl lying on a hospital bed. A voice that didn't answer anymore. And her own. Over and over again saying, get up. But nothing ever did.